I've never eaten whale. It can't be good. Just
eating
can't be
whale?
that good. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Isn't that mainly why they're being hunted? The Japanese love to eat them?
No idea.
I have a nickname of the whale. I was taking some of the guys that worked for a company I was working with. Took them out for dinner for sushi several years ago. And the waitress came over. She was very nice. Probably kind of new. And broken English in a Japanese restaurant. She said, some of the specials that they had, she read off. I said, do you have anything tonight that's like unique or special? Which I was just like, maybe they've got like, I don't know, some bluefin or something.
Sure.
And she looks at me and she says, we do not serve whale.
What? I wasn't thinking you did.
And I looked at it and I said, hey, look, you can just use my name, okay? To which the guys laughed their asses off. Sure. She didn't get the joke. We explained it to her. The meal went on. Everything was fine. But to this day, that group of guys still refer to me as the whale because of that, which I thought was really funny. And like as we worked together at a later company, they would buy me like a little whale accoutrements.
Of course they did.
And one of my favorite things ever, one of the engineers there put into Slack, the messenger, you can put in auto responses. So whenever there's a word or something, it responds. And there's this awesome GIF of a trainer at SeaWorld standing up and one of the killer whales spinning around and knocking him over.
Nice.
Like he's just the killer whale just doing his thing and knocks him over by accident. So they put in, anytime you said the word whale, quiet please, this thing would come up and spin around. So people would be like in a text thread talking about when they'd be like, we don't know why this happens. I just shrug and be like, I'm going to leave that.
In 4, 3, 2.
Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, episode number 37. I'm Jeff Parker.
And I'm CJ Little.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, CJ will look at kamikazes.
The drink.
Then we'll discuss iFixit entering the fight to get those darned ice cream machines at McDonald's working.
So is that like a dude just rolls up to iFixit with an ice cream machine from McDonald's? He's like, here, you fix it?
No. Do you not know this story?
I mean, I know a little bit of it, but you're going to tell me
who the iFixit guys are, right?
Of course.
Oh my God. We owe these guys such a huge debt of gratitude. We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
I had this is a dumb thing for iFixit, but they do it.
Sure.
They make manuals for how to fix things.
Okay.
I had an old phone that I loved. And it was probably 4 years old, longer than you should have a smartphone.
Sure.
And they put up there's a manual for how to replace the battery was going. Okay. They put up a manual for how to replace the battery. And I swear it was like you get their little spudger or whatever the thing's called.
Splooger.
It's called a splooger. You pull apart the glass sandwich that is the phone, and you actually can replace the battery. And it's even a place where you can order the replacement battery for like nothing. And you put in the new battery, and I was like, it's like, okay, this is going to work for like another 4 years. I don't want this phone to work.
Exactly.
I'm done with this phone. Yeah. But I kept it for like another 6 months or whatever, just because this works. This is remarkable.
I think it was the iFixit guys as well. My OG iPad, the first iPad, the Wi-Fi chip went out on it.
Sure. Okay.
Bought a new one for like $15. Bought the whole iFixit kit.
Sure.
But like it had like a sack of, it came literally with a sack of rice that you had to nuke in the microwave to put on the glass to heat up the adhesive so you could pry it apart.
Interesting.
And it was like a I don't know, an 18-step process. I got to step 2 and I was like, fuck this.
Apple plays big in the right to repair fight.
Yeah, sure.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to come up to that. It is Gobstopper Day. September 14th is Gobstopper Day, popularly known as Jawbreakers.
Is the Gobstopper is that the English word?
That is the English word. And you remember.
I meant like from England.
Yes, you remember it from Willy Wonka, where they have the everlasting Gobstoppers. And there actually was a Gobstopper they licensed the Willy Wonka candy name to somebody. And then Nestle ended up buying that company.
Along with water.
There were everlasting Gobstoppers, may still be on the shelves to this day.
They seem like a terrible idea for kids.
Gobstoppers? Because you
just the little round
would inhale and you would die?
They just seem like choking hazards.
Yeah, of course they are.
It's like, why would you do this?
Every other toy in the world comes with anything resembling that.
There's a hole in the middle.
Saying, do not give to your child. Exactly.
Hey, give me one of those.
Choking hazard.
You have anything that's just slightly bigger than my esophagus?
Exactly.
What do you have that's just a little bigger than my esophagus?
Like the size of maybe a golf ball.
Yeah. Could you put a little plug on that?
This seems like a safe thing.
It seems terrible.
It is also National Eat a Hoagie Day.
I'm sorry?
National Eat a Hoagie Day. Do you know what hoagie is?
I do.
Oh my gosh.
I think I had
Submarine
one on Sunday.
sandwich, long bread filled with meat, cheese, veggies, whatever it is you want to put in it. Also called subs, torpedoes, poor boys, or grinders.
I mean, I grew up in...
Heroes, bombers, submarines.
You got a lot of these, don't you?
Goes on.
I had one on Sunday from a very nice Italian deli here in Los Angeles.
It is also National Sober Day, part of National Sober month.
Is September's National Sober Month?
The initiative is sponsored by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. The holiday can be about renewing one's commitment to staying sober or marking the start of a journey to getting sober. Millions of people suffer from substance abuse, and this day reminds them that they are supported and that they are not alone in their struggles.
This is a good day.
This is a good day. How's your week going?
Well, now I feel like I should probably drink less. I mean, I got to think about that during the whole show.
Whatever you need to do. You know if you have problems or you don't.
Look, I just wanted to show up and talk about suicide missions, and now all of a sudden we got to talk about National Sober Day. As you know, it's hot in California still. LA is still pretty hot.
Man, it is.
Went to the beach over the
weekend. I thought we were done with this. I thought this was going to pass.
Here's my idiot self. I was like, let's go to the beach. We'll bring the kids. We'll invite some of the other parents for the new school. We'll go to the beach. That was Saturday night. I wake up Sunday morning to a rain forecast. I literally felt like, it rained. It wasn't in the forecast. It's like, what happened? How'd you miss this? I really feel like Steve Martin in LA Story.
I also live in Southern California where it didn't rain.
It did.
In Beverly Hills, we didn't have rain.
But it was like, here's what was crazy. It was like a 40% chance of precipitation, but it was like 0.001 inch.
Yeah, I mean,
it just
like
drizzled
nothing.
For a second.
Right.
So I was like, fuck this, we're going to the beach.
It
was perfect.
We didn't even notice it here.
But the waves were insane. The tide was pretty killer. Pardon the pun.
All good, right?
All good. Didn't see any dolphins.
Kids enjoyed the beach?
Kids loved it.
Dolphins scare the crud out of me.
Why?
When I go out into like Matador State Beach or something like that, and I'll go out with a bodyboard.
We were at Zuma. We were right next to you.
Yeah, and it's really fun to play on the waves out there with a boogie board. And one time I was joined by maybe 6 dolphins right alongside close to me. I could not get to the shore fast enough.
Sure. Were they trying to ask you about your car's warranty?
They should have been.
That would have been great.
No, I'm sure everybody says the dolphins are so lovely and they're wonderful and all that.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to get the pack of dolphins. They've got the cigarettes rolled up in their sleeves. These are the bad guys who are going to kill you.
The other side of the tracks?
Yes.
How's your week going now that you're back? Because you've been in isolation for a good 7 or 8 days, right?
Yeah, no, that's not a bad thing.
Are you ready to go back to a Dodger game and get sick again?
I'll be back shortly, yeah.
Oh, you really?
100%.
Of course.
But I'm like, I have super immunity now.
You do.
From the one variant that I got,
exactly.
the 9 other variants that exist, no, I have no immunity from. But
let me know what game you're going back to. I'll play somebody this time with different variant nearby.
Would you? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Did you get your college class ring?
No.
The reason I bring this up is that my kid and his classmates all got their class rings.
Okay.
And they had actually this thing called a ring ceremony where you had to go and you'd think these kids had graduated. There were tons of speeches and they were very self-congratulatory. And, all that's happened is your parents wrote a check to Jostens.
They just bought a thing.
You did nothing. Why are we having this ceremony?
I'd like to thank you all for the Civic SI, the Honda Civic SI that was purchased for me.
Shall we get to our headlines?
God, I hope so.
There is news in the world.
There is. What's happened?
Ukraine is furious with Elon Musk for thwarting an attack on the Russian Navy.
This is the Starlink story, right?
Elon Musk made it so that they could not do their Starlink on certain geographical boundaries.
Yeah, so they didn't want to be a participant in the war.
Right, even though they were already a participant in the war because they were providing Starlink services in other locations. Yeah,
sure. One of the advisors to Zelensky said that by not allowing this, you're an active participant in the war because then they could attack you.
Yeah, well, sure.
Which is what they did.
I mean, that's the problem with a war is there's no clear this is offense, this is defense. In some ways, your offensive moves are literally designed to keep yourself safe, to keep them from being able to attack you.
Attacking the ship so they can attack you. Yeah, exactly.
The crazy part of this story to me, or at least seems crazy to me, is that Elon Musk gets to dictate foreign policy.
Yeah.
This is so wrong.
Yeah.
I don't remember voting for Elon Musk in any democratically held election for anything.
I still think this whole Starlink Ukraine thing was like we're going to give it to you, and then after a couple months we're going to be like, oh, well, we can't keep paying for it. Someone's got to pay for it.
Sure. And the United States very graciously is writing a giant check.
You remember the CD clubs in the 90s?
Yes.
Where you'd sign up and for like 1 cent they'd send you 10 CDs.
Sure.
Like, oh, great. But then you're like, it's $20 a month thereafter and you have to take a CD, and if you don't change your money back.
I never signed up for one, so I never knew what happened next.
I feel like this is the same thing. It's just the CD club for Starlink.
You are allowed to broadcast in the air, and therefore, if the United States needs your equipment for a war effort,
you better give it to them.
You probably need to give it to them.
You would think,
because you don't get to decide foreign policy. And I'm also shocked at the United States for not just saying that to them.
I mean, maybe they did at some point. We don't actually know the details of their deal for purchasing. They might have been like, look, we're going to pay you $1 for this, and you're going to shut the fuck up, or you're going to have a real problem.
They paid $400 million.
No. I don't think that was ever publicized. They estimated Starlink, SpaceX estimated it was $400 million.
Nearly $1 billion in subsidies.
Then later said it was a lower amount, but it's never been publicized what the U.S.
What the actual number was?
No. Yeah. So we don't know. It could have been $1.
But the thing they need to add to that contract is, and you also don't get to decide where it works and doesn't work.
And also,
foreign policy is not what you get to do.
Appendix 3 should have said, and change x.com back to Twitter. you fucktard.
Also get a permit before you change the sign.
With the lights that blare into the people's houses.
WhatsApp tests a feature that could open it up to other messaging apps.
So I think this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Generally, this is part of the European Union.
European Union is just making everybody do things now.
But
some of the things make sense, some of the things make less sense.
Well, this one, I'm not sure how they're going to implement it. My read on this is it just said that it's requiring gatekeepers to maintain interoperability.
Right.
So that doesn't imply to me that they have to open up their encryption. They just have to provide some way for someone to talk using the same service. So I would hate to see WhatsApp
the
or any of them.
The encryption is wide open. They're using the signal messaging protocol.
Yeah, totally.
It's open source.
So that shouldn't be a problem.
Anyone can make it, anyone can make it work.
If you're a unencrypted messaging app and you say, well, I want interoperability, I want to support your encryption, that to me should be a hard no. But I didn't read anything in this
what you'll get if you
don't
don't know how to decrypt the WhatsApp messages,
it's just blob of text.
Garbage. Just it'll make no sense.
Shit. Yeah. There you go. There's your unencrypted transfer.
Exactly.
Good luck.
Enjoy this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also really big. You give like a one-word answer and you get a paragraph
as
back.
You should. Yeah,
sure.
I think net this is probably a good thing. I'm not across enough to know how it's being implemented. They just don't want walled gardens, which I generally think is a good idea. As long as you can keep them safe.
You think walled gardens are a good
No, not having walled gardens.
Not a good idea. Yeah. Well, there are certain things that I think, yes, I wish the EU would browser rendering engines. I wish they would, force everybody to allow anyone who wants to put out a browsing rendering engine onto a platform to be able to do so. It's crazy to me that we're stuck with ancient browser rendering engines on iOS.
Sure.
Do you think in iOS 17 Apple will allow anything more?
Sideloading and
well, that's for app stores. That's for different app stores, which is great. I think that's really cool.
Which I still think if you have a different app store, to me that implies that the apps in that app store no longer require Apple approval.
Is that true?
That's what it implies to me.
Because you still have some things you might not want on your platform that even though they come from a different store.
The whole point of that is from the Epic ruling, right? So the Epic ruling was that Apple can't control distribution of applications and make money off it. Other ones can have app stores. Other companies can have app stores too. But if they're not going to have their hand in the revenue stream, why would they go through the process of approving and validating?
Because they absolutely do not want those applications on their devices. Now, what happens now? Will they still, this means there will be apps that you can put on your iPhone that don't pay the 30% toll to Apple?
You get it from an app store, some other system.
But the app store, when you put the app store on your phone, do they have to pay a 30% to Apple? Because you got to get that somewhere.
That's a great question. I don't know. They just move the 30% to the aggregate and move it in. I don't know.
How does that work?
We're going to find out.
No, we're not. This thing's going to be appealed until we're dead. It does work on Android. You get a second app, because I've had a second app store for a long time and it works great. But you pull it down from a website. In Android's very different. You can just download the APK and you can install it, and it's not boom, you got it going.
Yeah, the fast way to get your phone infected.
You do have to be selective with the app vendors, of course, but I've never had a problem with it ever. But I understand.
Speaking of, by the way, it's loosely related to this. If you are an iOS user right now and you haven't updated your phone to 16.6.1, whatever the latest security update is,
oh my gosh,
you
I
need
heard
to do
about
it
this
today.
Yeah.
You need to pause this show, go update, and come back and finish
your phone.
it.
Yeah,
because it is a terrible. There's a 0-day exploit that we probably should have highlighted earlier in the show. You can be infected without doing anything, just an iMessage push being sent to you. It's pretty gnarly.
This is part of the problem with not having your code open source, because you don't have people who are looking at it, hammering at it. It's not that you don't have bugs. It's not that you don't have bugs in open source code. It's just you've got 9 million people screaming at you saying you got bugs in your open source code.
Yeah,
it's not a bad thing.
You still have people looking at it. There's just they're not incentivized the same way.
Right.
They're not looking at the source, right?
Right.
Yeah. Pretty interesting they found this exploit. I'm kind of fascinated with how they found it, but I'm sure they're just going through images, right? That's all you have is software images.
And how many more are out there?
A lot.
That's part of the problem. Again, with not having open source, there could be zillions of holes.
Sure.
NASA astronaut Frank Rubio inadvertently breaks the record for the longest U.S. space mission.
This is pretty cool. He was up there. He was supposed to be up there for like a half a year.
Right.
Now he's up there for like a year plus.
Yeah.
Because there was an oopsie on one of the Soyuz capsules.
It's the problem. There aren't a lot of buses to and from the International Space Station.
You miss it in your host.
You can't be late to the bus for sure.
He's supposed to be coming home, I think, next week.
Yeah.
I think next week, the week after, something like that.
And his heart won't work. He's going to, it's going to take so long for his atrophied muscles to get him back into Earth's
a year in
being used to being on Earth.
I mean, they work out a bunch up there, right? I mean, they've got
they do
stationary bikes and things to work out to try to keep some muscle mass.
By the way, it's not the record. There is somebody who was up there for 400 days,
400 plus, like 430 days.
And what happened to that person? Do we remember?
They're still up there to this day.
Oh, is that right?
Flying around, just Lucy in the sky with diamonds
on a space station we don't have.
Yeah, totally. He's on Mir still. No, wow. I think it was somebody on. That was a Russian cosmonaut on Mir years ago. I don't know what happened. That's a good question. I'm sure that was a rough landing.
Oh man,
rough come down.
A rough next year. The year of regaining all that heart muscle mass.
But also your bone density.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you lose like 20% of your bone mass if you're up there for more than a couple months.
And do you get it back when you come back to Earth?
I don't. Well, it's not like a locker. You don't check it in on the way out. You only get in the shuttle and like, Mr. Barker,
I'm going to need 20% of your bones,
mass,
please.
Just put it in there, and it doesn't work.
You'll get it on the way back,
unless you lose the key. If you leave the key in space, then
don't
really
leave the keys in space.
I don't have the key. Like, how can I prove it's yours?
Sorry, dude.
It's gone.
Looks like Twitter shadow banned the New York Times.
It doesn't look like Twitter shadow
which advertises on Twitter.
Pretty sure. I know. That's what better way.
I'm calling it Twitter because calling it X just makes me feel stupid. I mean, when I say it's on X and you go, what are you talking about? What's X? It is particularly ironic since the New York Times is one of X's biggest advertisers.
I mean, one of the few remaining ones. They don't need all the other ones. They're just like, oh, no, let's make the service worse for people that are advertising here.
How do they know that the New York Times was shadow banned?
So this is pretty interesting. There's a couple companies, one in particular cited in this article, that was looking at the click-through, basically like seeing what engagement looked like.
Yeah.
And they looked across platforms and they looked across different news outlets.
Right.
And they noticed that during this time period, the New York Times had a significant decrease in engagement, but only on Twitter.
Yeah.
Had the same engagement on Facebook, and all the other platforms had the same basic engagement on Twitter. So the presumption here is
the only way this would have dropped would have been
New York Times was pushed down. So you saw less engagement.
Okay, enough with the headlines. Up next, CJ is going to talk about suicide missions. Really?
Yep. After listening to this show, I feel like that's the right next thing for us.
We have gone from dark to darker.
It was either this or Play-Doh.
You had a story idea for Play-Doh?
No, but now I got to go find one.
Play-Doh was originally wallpaper cleaner.
What? Was that true?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Have you ever played Play-Doh charades?
No.
Oh my God, it's the most fun thing.
What is Play-Doh charades? You make a charade?
You can only describe things using things you can make out of Play-Doh, little figurines.
But do you actually make it out of Play-Doh?
You 100% have to make it out. It's awesome.
That sounds really hard.
It's really fun. It's super fun. All right, let's get out of here. You're going to tell us about, what are you going to talk about? Suicide missions? Oh my God. I was so happy with the Play-Doh story. Hit the thing. Let's go.
Hit the button. What do you know about suicide missions?
Very little, stunningly little. I know they were extremely effective in World War II, the things they called kamikaze missions.
Kamikaze.
We kind of figured that out eventually, how to defend from it.
Yes, and that's typically what people associate when you say suicide missions. It's like the kamikazes of the Japanese in World War II. So the definition of a suicide mission is a task which is so dangerous for the people involved that they are not expected to survive.
Yeah.
Kind of obvious. But the risks involved with those missions are not always apparent to those participating in them. So if an action is to be considered a suicide mission, the people involved must be aware of the risks.
Yeah.
If it's just a mission that goes wrong, that's not a suicide mission.
Correct.
And when people think of suicide missions, you typically hear things like you said, right? Like kamikaze attacks, September 11th, suicide bombings in general. Those are the things that come to mind. However, there have been some amazing, what I would call heroic suicide missions in history that have been for the benefit of what I would believe most people would call the greater good.
Is that right?
And that's what I kind of want to talk about today.
We just passed the 22nd anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah. So that's actually the inspiration for this segment that you'll see towards the bottom, but not for the reasons that you think. Not for the guys that were.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Not for the guys that were that the terrorists that flew the planes into the buildings. If you go back to World War II, which you had brought up, there was the Doolittle raid. Which, have you ever heard of the Doolittle raid?
No.
So this, in some ways, predates the kamikazes. This was also known as the Tokyo raid, which was an air raid on April 18th of 1942 by the U.S. on the Japanese capital of Tokyo and other places on Honshu during World War II. Honshu was the island that Tokyo's on.
Sure.
It was the first American air operation to strike the Japanese capital. Although the raid caused comparatively minor damage, it demonstrated that the Japanese mainland was vulnerable to American air attacks.
If you're willing to die.
That's the thing. It's kind of fascinating in this. This was like the initial retaliation for the attacks on Pearl Harbor 5 months previous, right? And it provided an important boost to American morale. Under this plan, 16 B-25B Mitchell medium bombers, each with a crew of 5, were launched from the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier USS Hornet in the Pacific Ocean.
Okay.
There were no fighter escorts. Let me repeat that. There were no fighter escorts.
Okay.
So now you've got 16 big-ass bombers that are going to try to fly to Tokyo to bomb Tokyo, basically to say like, hey, we can get to you too.
Right.
And the expectation indication was that these guys were probably going to have to ditch.
Right.
And they may or may not come back. So this was not, I wouldn't call it kamikaze. They weren't flying the planes into things, but no fighter escorts. There's not a lot of expectation you're going to get through this thing in one piece.
Wow.
After bombing the military industrial targets, the crews were supposed to continue westward to land in China. That was the plan.
Okay.
On the ground, the raid killed about 50 people and injured about 400. The damage to the Japanese military and industrial targets was slight, but the raid had really major psychological effects.
Because they can get here.
Yeah. So in the U.S., it raised morale. In Japan, it raised fear and doubt about the ability of military leaders to defend the home islands.
Right.
And the bombing and strafing of civilians created a desire for retribution. And this was exploited for propaganda purposes. But the raid pushed forward Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's plan to attack Midway Island in the Central Pacific. That attack turned into a decisive defeat of the Imperial Japanese Navy by the U.S. Navy in the Battle of Midway. Mm-hmm. So you can sort of argue that this Doolittle raid ended up, which was effectively a suicide mission, ended up pushing the Japanese and allowing us to help. One of the many things that allowed us to help win the war in the Pacific. Now, in the end of this Doolittle raid, of the 16 crews involved, 14 returned to the United States or reached the safety of American forces. Wow. Although one man was killed while bailing out, all but one of the B-25s were destroyed in crashes. So all the planes did not make it, right? Only one made it.
It's amazing that so many people got back.
Well, the 16th one had to land in the Soviet Union. At that time, the Soviet Union hadn't entered the war yet. So they had to intern the crew, and then they magically, quote unquote, escaped sometime later. Basically,
sure.
They just let them escape and then just, get out of town. What's crazy about this too, which is a little sideline, Doolittle initially believed that the loss of this aircraft would lead to his court-martial. Instead, he received the Medal of Honor and was promoted 2 ranks to Brigadier General.
Wow.
How crazy is that? Like, he thought this thing was a total failure, but he ended up getting promoted and getting the Medal of Honor.
Well, we got 14 of 16 back. That's pretty much, especially if you thought you were going to lose everybody.
But you lost pretty much all the planes.
Okay.
But, as it turns out, that was less important.
Hardware's okay. Destroy hardware.
That, to me, was an example of where you've got this sort of, greater good suicide mission.
Yeah.
Now, this one's totally different. In April of 1986, engineers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant began a routine safety test on a steam turbine in one of its reactors. Somewhere along the way, human error, flaws in the design of the Soviet reactor, began an uncontrolled nuclear chain reaction, sending incredible amounts of energy surging through the power station. Mm-hmm. It is one of only 2 nuclear energy accidents rated at 7. The maximum severity on the International Nuclear Event Scale. The other being 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan.
Why did we choose 1 to 7 as our scale? Why wouldn't we choose 1 to 10?
Don't know. I mean, I guess
it doesn't have to be a round number, but
at some point it's so fucked. You're just like, well, we can't think of anything more fucked than 7. So here it is. The ensuing fire released large amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere. First on the scene were the power station's own firefighters, led by Lieutenant Vladimir Pravik. He and his firefighters felt and heard the explosions, immediately geared up and drove towards the smoke. They had no idea the reactor just exploded. When Pravik realized the extent of the disaster, he put the entire region on alert and ordered all crew to come help at Chernobyl. He and his 13 men were facing a series of known and unknown challenges. The firefighters at Chernobyl knew the roof of the reactor was constructed using asphalt, which was not only combustible, but had spread a series of fires throughout the building.
Oh my.
So the roof is literally moving the fire around.
Right.
They didn't know that the uranium dioxide used in the core's fuel rods had also exploded and was burning along with the radioactive graphite used to slow the speed of neutrons, forming a highly toxic and radioactive smoke on the roof. Because all the systems were offline, Pravik, along with 5 other firefighters, had to run the hoses up to the roof via fire escapes to pour water onto the core, which at this time had reached temperatures of more than 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Right?
That's amazing.
This crew soon began to feel the effects of the uranium and had to be rescued from the burning building themselves as their muscles weakened and they began vomiting. In the core, it would have taken 48 seconds for a human to absorb a lethal dose of radiation. It only took 1 hour for Pravik and his comrades. It was said that the radiation was so intense, his eyes literally changed color.
Ugh.
And an autopsy of another one of these firefighters revealed burn blisters on his heart, which is insane. As more and more firefighters showed up on the scene at Chernobyl, the new arrivals understood they were going into a burning nuclear reactor. At this point, they knew it might cost them their lives, but they went in anyway. Mm-hmm. Right? They had to keep the fire from spreading to the number 3 reactor through the asphalt roof. The number 4 reactor was spewing not just uranium and graphite, but also radioactive cesium-137, iodine-131, and strontium-90 into the air. It was a fucking mess, right? The smoke plume would end up burning for 10 days and set radiation alarms off in Sweden.
I remember.
While depositing radioactive material in lakes as far away as Japan. Pravik and the firefighters, who were just meters from ground zero of the worst man-made disaster in human history, were so irradiated they had to be buried in coffins made of lead that were welded shut to prevent their corpses from contaminating the area for the next 26,000 years.
Wow.
These folks all sacrificed themselves for the environment and ultimately a large chunk of not just humans, but all living things for thousands of years to come, right? So the first guys didn't know, but the second set of guys, they knew.
They went in knowing.
They had no choice. Yeah. Right. And we saw something similar in Fukushima 10 years ago, right? In Fukushima, there were folks there that had to go in to ultimately try to control and fight the fire there. Yeah. They knew they weren't going to make it. So those were some of the backstories that I found. This next one is what gave me the inspiration for this segment. And this story, some people know, but to me, it's amazing. This is about Heather Penny. You know Heather Penny?
No.
Know this name? Penny, who was our first lieutenant at the time, was ordered into the air in her F-16 fighter jet along with Mark Seysseville's aircraft at Andrews Air Force Base as the terrorist attacks were unfolding on September 11th, 2001.
Wow.
They were ordered to down United Flight 93.
Oh, wow.
Before it reached the Washington, D.C. airspace. But because of the urgency, there was not enough time to outfit their aircraft with live ammunition. So other than the minimal 100 rounds of ball, ammunition they always carried. So this mission could only have been accomplished by ramming the plane, right, with the respective jets.
Right. Literally.
Did you know the story?
No, but I'm following you.
Yeah. So Penny and her fellow pilot, Seysseville, were never able to intercept United 93 because it crashed 35 minutes before they took off and likely would have reached Washington 15 minutes prior to being airborne. Penny would, and the reason United 93 crashed, of course, because the passengers fought back.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So Penny would go on to say that we did not have missiles. We were on a suicide mission. And in order to be able to take any airliner down, SAS would ram his aircraft into the cockpit where the terrorists were to destroy the flight controls. I would take the tail by ramming my jet into the tail of the aircraft. I would aerodynamically unbalance the airplane and tip it over so it would crash straight into the ground by targeting both ends of the aircraft.
Wow.
It was our plan to prevent any additional casualties. Right? So that's kind of crazy to think about U.S. fighter pilots having to do this. She would later say, we knew what needed to be done, and there were no tears. The prayers, to be honest, were, dear God, don't let me mess this up, because of how important it was and the potential consequences if we were not successful. In the Washington Post, Penny described her willingness to down Flight 93 without using live ammunition, saying that, quote, there are things in this world that are more important than ourselves. We belong to something greater than ourselves. As complex and diverse and discordant as it is, this idea called America binds us together in citizenship and community and brotherhood. We have to make a commitment to stability. We have to make a commitment to engaging in this kind of dialogue and remembering that there are things that connect us. What it means to be an American is so much more than the differences that we have between us, she said. We need to recommit to understanding before judging, that those connections are more important than our differences, and to overcome or move past our fear and into the ability to serve, to sort of move beyond ourselves. I read that and I was like, okay, this is something I want to talk about, and I want to sort of build a segment around. As I was digging through this information about Penny, one of the paragraphs I came across eloquently illustrated my thoughts on this, which was to let us never forget, but perhaps more importantly, let us remember that there are things in this world more important than ourselves, that we all belong to and are part of something greater than ourselves, and that our connection is more important than our differences. That inside each and every one of us is the courage and heroism that we all witnessed that day. That there are not unique or extraordinary qualities, but instead are common and are all around us every day. And I've said for years, and I've said this I think on this show, that the best thing to bring us together as a planet and as a species is for another much more angry species to come and push us around, right? It's like literally Independence Day. And I think they did a great job illustrating in just 2.5 hours what happens when something that doesn't look like us comes and tries to kill all of us. I like to remind myself, and would like to remind you, dear listener, that we should really find a way to get along better now and not wait for a very grumpy species to show up on their giant craft with the intent of annihilating, enslaving, or auctioning us all off to the highest space bidder.
Right.
This Penny story was the one that I came across, and I was like, whoa, this was a thing. Like, they had to get in the air with this.
I cannot imagine that decision.
They had to go. Yeah. And she even said, if you reading some articles about her, she's like, I put up my hand and pledged an oath to protect, and this is what I had to do. And she said, there was no thought. She's like, anybody who was in the ops stream that day would have done the same thing. Yeah. She just happened to be the one there. But here you are, like this incredible military might.
Those are superhumans.
You do a lot of things in a simulator. I'm pretty sure they don't simulate this.
No, of course not.
So you got to think about, like, how in the world do you crash? Like, these things are moving pretty fast. You're
designing it probably as you fly. You're talking back and forth, figuring out, you're going to take the front, I'm going to take the back.
I could see how maybe you crash into the tail, but I don't know how you crash into the cockpit.
Well, how you crash into the tail once someone has crashed into the cockpit.
Well,
because once someone's crashed into the cockpit, they're going, they're not flying in a straight.
Well, if it's unstable enough, then you hope that I mean, this whole story to me was just bonkers. But the fact that, you don't leave these things sitting around with missiles on them. You've never had an attack you've had to respond to this fast.
Why don't we leave them sitting around with missiles on them?
I think now we might.
Maybe we should.
I think now maybe we do. Yeah. More so armed patrols. But, in peacetime, you had plenty of notice.
I'm happy to hear that Penny lives in this story.
Yeah, she's in private industry now. I think with one of the providers, but for a long time, she was in the Air Force.
Yeah, amazing.
It was incredible.
Amazing.
So anyway, to me, these were some suicide missions I think we normally think of as things that are not good. As something that was very positive for the greater good.
Yeah.
And really all of these sort of work together.
Such a huge and important and moving story that I feel like my little McDonald's story that I'm about to tell is just kind of silliness.
Maybe you should go before me from now on.
Maybe I should.
Maybe, and then I can start doing the fun stories.
Because this is going to be just,
Why do I do all the heavy stories in the middle? I don't understand.
This is a story about 5-year-olds who like to eat at McDonald's.
Can we do that more often?
Maybe.
I've got Chernobyl in here. I had to work Chernobyl, Japan, and September 11th all into one segment.
Yeah, no, this is going to be about iFixit and Apple and McDonald's. I couldn't be more lightweight today.
Well, together we average into a regular size American.
Good.
That's
good.
perfect.
Shall we do the thing?
You got to push the button.
Let's do it. Do you let your kids eat at McDonald's? You have 2 kids that are 2 years apart?
22 months, yes.
22 months. 5, and what's the other one?
3.
5 and 3.
I'll help you with the math.
Do you let them eat at McDonald's?
Your Honor, I'll take my Fifth Amendment on that, please.
So that's a yes?
Before I met my wife, my first wife, I hadn't eaten McDonald's to my knowledge. I hadn't eaten McDonald's since I was a kid.
Yeah.
My wife has one vice. Do you know what it is? There's only one
McDonald's?
vice. Coke. She loves cherry
Coca-Cola.
Coke. Coca-Cola,
okay,
cherry Coke.
Okay.
Now, I must admit, McDonald's has the best tasting Coca-Cola on the planet.
Sure.
There's a reason for that. They make it sweeter. They dial the sweetness up.
Is that true? I had no idea.
They dial it up to offset for the ice melting. This is true.
Oh, wow.
It's 100% true, yeah. Also, their French fries aren't terrible.
Yeah,
so
sure.
before we had kids, we'd go there for like a Coke and French fries now and again. Spend $3 and be happy days. Well, now with the kids, now they want that. But like I just refuse. I'm not going to get them a hamburger from McDonald's.
Yeah.
But like they have smoothies now, so I'll get them smoothies. And this is hysterical because the 3-year-old he sits behind me in the car. He'll drink the smoothie. He'll drink like half of it, and then you hear him go, brain freeze, brain freeze.
Yeah, totally.
And he doesn't know what to do, but I thought it was a brain freeze. But like his brain just breaks. Long story, not so long. Yes, we do go to McDonald's now and again. I am familiar.
Because this is always the problem with being in a relationship when you have a child is that there's 2 parents.
Yes.
And there are parents who are adamantly against their child going to McDonald's.
Sure.
And then there's also my wife. Who insists, of course he gets to go to McDonald's.
There's 2 kinds of parents in this world.
Yes. I'm taking the McDonald's.
Sure.
So very quickly he learns, he sees the golden arches off in the horizon.
Yeah.
Literally kids get this like radar where they can see around corners.
Yeah.
And all they don't say let's go to McDonald's.
Light bends.
What Jake would say was, literally we're driving out of some place where we just having a massive meal. We pull out of the parking lot and he knows the McDonald's is down and around the corner. I'm hungry.
Yeah, totally.
I'm hungry.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You can't be hungry. You just ate a giant meal. I'm hungry.
Yeah. So 2 things on that. One, my children call it Old McDonald, which I think is hysterical.
Why Old McDonald? Because of the song. Okay.
And we won't correct them on it.
Sure. No, why would you?
They also call eyeballs eye bulbs, which I think is hysterical.
Don't correct them on that either.
Don't correct them on that. I actually reinforced that one. But yes, they also, it's like they know that you're near there. So it's like they have like a GPS fence.
They have the perfect GPS for McDonald's.
Yeah,
and part of it,
incredible.
I think, is that 16 cents worth of plastic called the Happy Meal toy.
Happy Meal toy, yeah.
Every kid wants that stupid Happy Meal toy.
Totally.
By the way, eventually they started selling those Happy Meal toys. You could go just buy it for $1.
I didn't know that. Really?
You didn't mean to buy that may be a California thing. I don't know. But you didn't have to buy the whole Happy Meal because I didn't want my kid eating all this McDonald's stuff. But he wanted the toy. Fine, we'll go. And if it's a toy you don't have, if it's a McDonald's Happy Meal toy you don't have, I'll blow the buck and we'll get you the Happy Meal.
Sure.
And then we'll put some real food in your body.
Sure.
Great. All good.
Okay.
Tons of these toys, from these visits later. Yeah. He still would be like, every time he would see McDonald's, I'm hungry.
Yeah, the toy is like the hook. It's the soft drug that gets you coming in.
The problem is with McDonald's for adults.
Yeah.
Because you don't care about the Happy Meal.
Sure.
you're driving through already.
Sure.
And you think, well, I'll get the ice cream.
Sure.
I'll get the McDonald's, the McFlurry. I'll get the whatever the ice cream thing is. Do you know what percentage of McDonald's ice cream machines are down at any given moment?
Oh, well, I can tell you this. This is a true story.
Yeah.
The one by my house that I go to with my children more often than I care to admit, since my children have been alive, so 5+ years, their fucking McFlurry machine does not work.
Yeah.
So we get ice cream with M&Ms on top. And I'm like, and I literally say to them, aren't you supposed to blend them up? Yeah, the machine's down. By the 6th time they told me that, I'm like, is the machine ever going to be fixed? And the guy shrugged at me and I was like, that's my answer.
Yeah, that's your answer.
So clearly I'm at one of the McDonald's that is the broken machine. You're asking me percentage? I'm going to say, based on my experience, 20% of them are down at any given time.
You're very close. I mean, it's actually not quite that high, but it depends where you are. And in California, you're probably correct in those areas. But what McDonald's will tell you at any given time is as many as 10% might be down.
That's
in reality, there's a website that tracks in real time.
No way.
It's called McBroken. Go to McBroken.com. It'll blow your brains.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Wow.
Every single McDonald's and whether or not and it's all self-reported.
Sure.
It's all consumer reported. Whether their ice cream machine is up or down.
Oh wow, that's great.
Right now, if you look at that website, 14.39% of the ice cream machines in the U.S. are down.
Sure.
There's a reason for this.
Okay.
None of this is by accident. You would think, wow, they're just bad at ice cream machines.
Machine. Yeah.
Right. The company who makes the machine is called Taylor Company, right?
Okay.
You've probably seen the logo. They sell ice cream machines to lots of fast food chains, including Burger King, Wendy's, Arby's, Sonic's Drive-In, Dairy Queen, Baskin Robbins, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, KFC,
Everyone.
Taco Bell, Subway. None of the rest of these chains have this problem.
Okay.
They all manage to keep their Taylor machines up and running.
It's working just fine.
You know what the problem with the McDonald's one is?
Is it like please tell me. I don't ask you for much. Please tell me it's like a inkjet printer. Like when you put in the fucking ice cream milk, it has like a little RFID on it.
It's much more sinister than that.
Oh,
really? In fact, it's very, very close. It's almost the identical machines that everybody else has too.
But
McDonald's has a deal. McDonald's Corporation, not the franchisees, has an exclusive deal with Taylor that only Taylor can fix those machines.
Oh, interesting.
McDonald's from Taylor gets millions and millions of dollars for signing this deal.
Yeah.
And so the only way that they will permit these machines to be fixed is if you use a Taylor, and Taylor charges a ton of money to come fix their own machines. It's top dollar. Anybody could fix the machine. It's not a complicated machine.
I got screwdrivers. Why can't I just go fix it?
Right. But the way that they fight it is they say it is a violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act because there's actually software.
So there's code in there
that is giving you error codes. And the error codes, everyone says, are absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
But you can't go and touch this thing because it gives you software little error codes for fixes. Right.
I have an interesting, very related story to that on the DMCA takedown there that you might enjoy. Very quick. I know of firsthand at least one, I think 2 car companies that used DMCA takedowns to keep people from pulling off images of their car software.
Oh, of course.
Right? Because they would like do some mild encryption on it. You pull it down, you decrypt it, and then if you make any modifications like the fuel map or whatnot, they would then send you a DMCA takedown and record it up. One car company in particular happened to leave the debugger on the ECU, and so people figured this out, and they fired up the debugger and got the debugger to kick out the unencrypted code, and then they're like, well, it wasn't fucking encrypted. No DMCA violation. Talk about a clusterfuck on that. Anyway.
There was a guy who actually made a little computer machine, a little mini computer machine that would tell you what the error codes actually meant and how to fix them.
Just open source the software. Good luck with your
and McDonald's sent notices immediately to their franchisees. You may not use these. Wow. These are against the law.
Did they threaten taking back the license? Like
yeah. Taylor reported a $1.1 billion revenue from its ice cream machine business.
No, wait a minute. Oh, man.
Now, nobody else has this deal except McDonald's. The other fast food chains all allowed that their franchisees to go
they just wanted to sell fucking ice cream.
To go get Bob, the guy down the street who's good at mechanical things, to fix the ice cream machine.
Wow. I mean, I was going to say, like, okay, who cares? It's got to be small potatoes, but $1 billion in
it's not
service.
Small. It's huge.
Not small potatoes.
iFixit believes, the iFixit people who give you the sploogers for the popping off the thing, and like I said, to make my phone last a lot longer and all of that. They have finally entered in this fight, which is like, wow, because nobody's going to beat McDonald's, except iFixit, who tends to win these fights.
Interesting.
I mean, literally went up against some serious Goliaths and have won. They argue that it's unfair to force McDonald's franchisees to pay Taylor's high prices for repairs and repairmen who can't come in a timely manner when the machines quite simply need to be fixed. They also argue that the service contract prevents franchisees from fixing the machines themselves, which can lead to longer wait times for customers.
Yes.
iFixit has done 2 things. One, as first reported by 404 Media, do you know the website 404 Media?
Yeah, of course.
Is to join with interest group Public Knowledge to petition the Copyright Office for an exemption allowing people to fix commercial equipment such as McDonald's ice cream machines, and other industrial kitchen equipment without fear of reprisal under Section 1201 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. The other is to obtain one of Taylor's ice cream machines used by McDonald's franchisees, tear it down, look about how it could be so unreliable, look at what exactly the problem is.
Sure.
The quote from iFixit is, the error codes are nonsensical, counterintuitive, and seemingly random.
Sure.
The DMCA makes it illegal to bypass software locks on the devices, and Taylor Ice Cream have software locks to prevent unauthorized repairs. iFixit argues that the DMCA exemption is necessary to allow them to repair the ice cream machines. They say that the software locks are not necessary to protect the copyrights of Taylor. They actually harm consumers by preventing repairs. The Copyright Office is considering iFixit's petition, and a decision is expected to be coming in the coming months.
I mean, it seems unlikely on that first point they're going to have any success. Just because you're saying it's a food device, to me, doesn't make it any different. There's plenty of other devices out there that have nothing to do with food that are protected by this same act. I'm not saying
the software part is not the part that's breaking.
Okay, so let's say you can solve the DMCA problem. You still can't solve the franchisee problem. If McDonald's tells you have to do this, you have to use this company, and if you don't, we're going to threaten your license. It doesn't matter if DMCA is cleared or not.
Franchisees have bought that equipment.
But you could make the point that in order to keep it at some standard, we need to use this group that knows how to fix the shit so that there's a standard McDonald's and you have the same ice cream standard.
This is the argument that Apple makes about fixing iPhones and iOS devices and all of their, basically their computing equipment.
I do think that it's slightly different though, just because in that case, like if you want to put a new screen on an iPhone, you can't do that on your kitchen table. Like you need special equipment to do
special gear, sure.
Now, if you buy the special equipment and you're trained on it, fucking fill your boots, right?
Guess who fought Apple and got it so that iFixit fought Apple and won.
Yeah.
And Apple will now send you the equipment
and you can buy the
repair
kit.
your... Yes. You cannot buy the kit. What actually happens is they send the kit out to you.
Yeah.
Because I actually had a friend who tried to do this. They send the kit out to you. If you don't return it by such and such a time, they charge your credit card for it.
Okay.
They do not want to sell you the equipment. They don't want to sell you the gear. And it's a very large tub of equipment. It's not a small amount of equipment.
So how does iFixit do that?
Even worse, what Apple is currently doing and has done basically in every case that I've been able to follow. I haven't been able to find anyone who's done this successfully, replace the screen successfully, legally. By the way, mom and pop repair shops can replace those screens easily with no problem. It happens all the time. What happens is Apple sends out the box of equipment. On the day that you're supposed to send back the box of equipment, before you get charged, you send back the box of equipment. Your parts don't arrive until the day after you have to return the box of equipment necessary to replace the parts. Do it again? If they even let you. They're intentionally making it hard. Sure. In 2020, iFixit won a lawsuit against John Deere, which required the company to provide farmers with access to repair manuals and diagnostic tools for their tractors. This was the first time that a court had ruled that farmers have a right to repair their own farm equipment. In 2021, iFixit won a settlement with Microsoft that requires the company to provide independent repair shops with access to genuine parts and repair tools for Surface devices. Oh, wow. So they've done this. iFixit has been successful so far with the cases they've brought. That's why the McDonald's thing is interesting, because you're going against a serious foe when you're going against iFixit. It's literally two guys, Kyle Wiens and Louis Souls. They're lovely, smart people doing this wonderful, wonderful work. I mean, the company is now sold. It's sold to a private equity company or something like that. More importantly, the work that they're doing is the same. They create repair manuals and they make them available for free. They fight fights so that people can repair their stuff. The other part of this that makes me nuts is, how is McDonald's allowed to do something that is such a massive conflict of interest? Clearly, they are not working on behalf of their franchisees. They're working solely on behalf of themselves.
This one seems a little nuts.
All right, we have to get out of here, but quickly before we do, have you seen or read anything good this last week?
Well, kind of. I went back in time a little and I watched an early episode of Big Mouth again. Do you ever see Big Mouth on Netflix?
I don't know Big Mouth.
Oh boy. You might want to go watch a little bit of Big Mouth.
Yeah?
It's a cartoon series. It's like these foul-mouthed middle school kids.
Okay.
And they're just discovering, basically going through puberty, and it's kind of hysterical.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's great. How about you?
I'm going to recommend again. I recommended it last week, Jerry Brown, the Disruptor. It's a documentary about the political and personal journey of Jerry Brown, the longest serving governor of California history. First elected at 36 years old and again at 72. His 50-year career tackling important issues like climate change and inequality premieres tomorrow, the 15th, on PBS American Masters. Be sure and see this PBS. It premieres tomorrow. And I'm mentioning this a second time now because you have only one day warning. This is it. Put this on your calendar. It's worth it. It's good.
I feel like I need to watch this because you've plugged it twice. You've never plugged anything twice.
Just because of the way this one falls on the calendar. The only way you can see it is if you tune in tomorrow.
That does sound really interesting. I will absolutely check that out.
That is the episode.
Thank you for joining us for all this nonsense. A truly terrible podcast from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I'm Little.
I'm Jeff Parker.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or our favorite, Overcast, wherever you get your podcasts from.
Podcastindex.org. Special thanks to our floor director, Dennis Smith.
Thanks so much, Dennis. We'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense. Please join us. But you're better. You're out of the COVID area.
Yeah, I mean, according to the 2 tests that I took, a day apart each, I have a very strong case of control, which I've apparently not shaken.
You haven't shaken the control
case? But the actual
case?
COVID, I no longer have.
That you no longer have.